Husband attempted suicide because I asked out. My hands are trembling and I've not slept a wink since last night as I write this. A month ago I told my husband I wanted to move out of the relationship. A month of fights and talks later, yesterday we had a cordial conversation where he said he'd move out and I can stay in the house as the lease is until March. We are in a foreign country, so there's no family around. Last night he attempted suicide. He wrote a note and he was gonna drink the toilet cleaning acid. Thankfully I was able to stop him. Pleaded and cried for him to not do it and that I'd stay with him. After which, he agreed to sleep. I've not slept a wink out of fear that he'd wake up and attempt killing himself again. What do I do? How do I handle this? Am I stuck in this relationship because he is suicidal? You call the police. Get him institutionalized. Then leave him. Some people do this to trap their lover in a relationship. Just leave. Call the police and tell them your husband has actively tried to commit suicide. Not sure which country you are in, but maybe they can do something. Ignore the comments telling you to stay. This is not your fault. You will get PTSD from this, but you will get CPTSD if you stay. You need to leave. I lived through this 2014-2015 and it just got worse and worse. He stayed suicidal, beat the shit out of me, and his mental health and mine just spiraled for months. Call an ambulance and leave. I am still in recovery from this and still can't date. You need to get out. He might kill you or himself. He needs professional help. Nope. He wasn't going to do it. If he was, he'd have done it and not told you. He wanted you freaked out, exactly as you are now. It's manipulation and abuse. Leave. Now. If he threatens suicide again, call 911 paramedics and don't engage. This is a form of abuse. Have him speak to a mental health expert, do so yourself no matter if he does, and continue making plans. You are never responsible for another person's mental health. That would be a very slow, painful way to go, so I think there is an element of control being attempted by him. But I'm no therapist or trained, so don't go off me. But you can't let him control you with threats like this. He knows it's all he has left over you and is wielding it. This is domestic violence. I went through this. Call an ambulance and leave. Call the police and get him admitted to a mental health unit. Call his parents or siblings or whoever has his back and tell them what's going on. Be very honest with them. Then leave. This is abuse and you don't deserve it. This is absolutely abuse and manipulation. Call the cops. My comment is gonna get buried cause I'm so late, but my dad did this with my mom. She was gonna leave him. He was abusive to her. Told him she wanted a divorce. Tried to kill himself with carbon monoxide poisoning. My mom eventually told me this when I was old enough. She said to him, "If this is what you wish to do, I can't stop you, but I will not stop myself from living a life I want to have. So I am leaving, whether you decide to suicide or not." As predicted, he did it as a way of manipulating her into staying. He's still very much alive today, almost 15 years later. This is what he wanted. For you to cave. To hold you hostage by threatening suicide. You should have called an ambulance and had him committed. You still can. Call the police and tell them what happened, that you are afraid he's a danger to himself. You leave. Immediately. Cut off all contact so he can't pull this stunt again. And if he does go through with it, that's not on you. But you can't live like this. You were right to leave him. Don't let anything stop you from following through on that. Call the police on him. DV laws are strict. Get him off your hands and leave. Then it would be on the cops to handle him. Your husband needs help. As someone who has dealt with being suicidal, I am reluctant to say this is just a form of manipulation. But on the other hand, you are not required to stay with him. Get him some help like a therapist or if it's really bad an institution, and leave the relationship. If anything happens after that, you did what you could and can move on with a clear conscience. He is more toxic than the toilet cleaning acid he tried to drink. Someone threatening to kill themselves shows they are mentally unstable. Leave before he loses another screw and murders you. You need to get him in an inpatient hold or whatever you have available in your country. You need to contact his family and tell them that you are leaving, that he is actively suicidal, and that they need to come get him. You need to leave. It is not your responsibility to give up your life to keep someone happy. Put yourself first. You can help him get help, but don't let it stop you from leaving. Emotional blackmail like this is among the cruelest things you can do to your significant other, and it's completely selfish. I don't know enough about you two and your problems, but if you are willing to end the relationship, then do it. You don't want to be his life support and be miserable for the rest of your lives. I don't know if he can be checked into a mental health clinic without his consent. Probably if you would call the cops, explain everything and show them the note. This sounds like extreme manipulation on his part, to use fear to trap you in the relationship. You need to leave. No, you're not. Was he drinking it or just saying he was going to do it? I think it's important to talk to him about his mental health and therapy. Do you plan to stay in the country you're in? Is he close to his family? This is a manipulation. No one can force someone to take their own life. It is their choice. Do not be a prisoner to this fear. This is incredibly toxic. Leave. My father used this tactic to keep my mother from leaving their abusive relationship. Just leave this, won't get any better if you stay, trust me. Don't let him hold you as a hostage. Call the police and ghost him. You saved his life and you owe him nothing. That's manipulation. You get him some help and you dip. That's abusive ASF. You call the police and tell them exactly what he told you. You're not equipped to deal with this. Leave him. If he dies, it's his own fault. My ex repeatedly grabbed a knife from the kitchen and locked himself in the bathroom, and I would spend hours crying and pleading with him. Get out of this now. It only gets worse with people willing to drop to that level to manipulate. It took me nearly 4 years of constant fighting and emotional abuse to get out because I was so worried he would actually kill himself. Spoiler. He didn't when I left and married someone else less than a year after we got divorced. Call the police in secret. They will hospitalize him where he can get the help that he needs. Also, it will protect you. He will try this again and you don't want to look like the guilty wife whose marriage is on the rocks and whose fingerprints are all over the medicine cabinet. He may take you down with him. Get the fuck out now. It's a common manipulation technique to threaten suicide. I was warned before a breakup by a family member about the possibility, because it had been used on her in the past, when I was young and had the suicide hotline number handy when the time inevitably came. He got upset I wasn't buying into it and dropped the threat because it had no power. What your guy is doing is working. Look at the attention he's getting and distress you're experiencing that's keeping you thinking you have to stay. Please don't stay. He's not your responsibility. Leave. You need to have him put in the psych hospital on suicide watch and you need to leave this relationship. His mental health can't depend on you alone and he's obviously very unhealthy and unstable right now. When my ex did this, we called the police and an ambulance to his home at the time and found him casually eating breakfast with the friend he was living with at the time. He was very upset that the police and the EMTs escorted him to the mental hospital. He also did it to trap me in the relationship, just like your husband. May I ask, why are you leaving him? Do you not love him anymore? Cause apparently he love you still. Call the authorities and leave. Simple. I doubt that he really wanted to commit suicide. In that case, he would have just done it without giving you the option to stop him. He has manipulated you into staying with him. This is a form of abuse. By no means should you stay with him. My father has made similar threats, suggestions throughout my parents' relationship and ongoing divorce. He is an abusive narcissist and this is a tactic used by abusers to keep their abusee feeling trapped and obligated to stay. Get him the help, supervision he needs to stay safe, i.e. bring him to the hospital, involve police, contact his friends, family, work, etc., and get yourself out before it turns even uglier. If he really planned to die last night, you wouldn't be able to stop him. He did this to manipulate you into staying with him. Call the police and leave him. Call the cops, tell them he's suicidal. Get him institutionalized. Then leave. He does not get to blackmail you into staying. He didn't attempt it, he threatened it to manipulate you into staying with him for fear of what he'd do. It's not your job to stay in a bad relationship because someone is threatening to kill themselves. That's not fair to you, and is abusive. He did it to manipulate you. Get help for him and then part ways. He likely has unresolved mental health problems, and he's hurting you even if he isn't 100% aware of it. What happens after you leave him isn't your fault. How disgustingly manipulative. NTA. He might kill you next because the suicide attempts didn't get you to stay. Everyone is right on that. Leave please, we are begging you. I understand your position. You don't want to have the guilt of his suicide lingering over you forever. But think about this, why did he write a suicide note detailing how he was going to kill himself? They're usually written as a goodbye, for people to find after they've passed. His note sounds like a threatening guilt trip. It's just designed to scare you. Where did he leave the note? Somewhere prominent, I bet. On your bed, kitchen bench. He is trying to manipulate you to stay. You may take him to the hospital if you feel he is a danger to himself. Call and inform his friends and family so they can take care of this. This is not your responsibility. You should not be forced to stay with someone. I do think he is actually not suicidal and he is just trying to manipulate you into staying, but just in case, do the above. Hospital and family and friends. Good luck and stay strong. I know this is difficult, but you can't be stuck with someone in a relationship you don't want to be in. Yes, he is your husband and no doubt on some level you still love him, but you have to do what is good for you, not for him. He will know when you decide to leave. Finally, he will be able to play this card to get you to stay. At some point you have to say look after yourself and move on. I doubt very much he will do anything. It is just a threat, nothing more. I know this because I am ashamed to say I played this card once before and it shamed me greatly. His reactions are not your responsibility. However, you don't need to be callous about it. It's a human life. Everyone would care. Make sure he knows you don't want him dead. But make sure you call the authorities and get him to a hospital. From there he will be institutionalized.